After the recent episode, like me, you might hate Sett for valid reasons, but I have read the manga after that, and let me tell you something. He's going to become one of the greatest support for her and will surely become one of your favorite characters from the anime. This anime/manga have the worst type of love triangle because not only the female lead is struggling to choose between the two, I too am struggling with her. One time I want her to end up with Azure, the black hair golden eye prince. The next I want Sett, the white hair guy, to just marry her already. Love angles are okay because we have that one obvious main lead, but love triangles, man, they're so bad for my health. When we talk about complex love triangle, it's clear that all three of the characters involved have their flaws. So you can't really hate Nina for not choosing one and get it over with. Many people forget that in the starting few seconds, Azure is seen as a meanie too. She called his eyes as the eyes of the beast. But after that, he becomes like the perfect love interest for Nina. He understands her and is willing to do anything for her sake. Because honestly, Nina is a loving character. She's kind and caring, the perfect balance between witty, childishness, brave, and bold. As their journey continues, they both help each other find their true identities. I mean, at first he killed Nina, giving her life as Alicia. But then he brought Nina back to life, agreeing to call her by her real name, but only when they're alone. He accepted her not just as Alicia, but as the girl that lived in those slums. And she made him realize that he should have his own will to live, not just as a prince, but rather as himself. If you have watched the anime, you'd know that he isn't actually a prince either. He's a substitute just like Nina. And the actual prince has been killed by his father when he was young. So he obviously has some identity crisis, and not to mention that his supposed father is continuously plotting to kill him off. That is until Nina or Alicia threatens him. And there's no denying that Azure is her first love. She loved him, or maybe she still does, but she was supposed to marry the Prince of Galgada from the beginning. She belonged with Sett as his queen. That was the reason why Azure had brought her as a priestess daughter, Alicia. If she's not to marry him, the king of Galgada will have war with them. She knew that Azure cared about this nation, and she too started to care for their people. That's why she left without saying a word to him. I agree that this was shortcoming on her part. I mean, it's all in the name of love, but she did hurt him with that decision. And later, he's going to do a similar thing to her, letting her go because he wants to protect her. As the real Alicia, the priestess come back and tell them about the people of the stars, taking Nina's identity as Alicia away from her, just as she was getting used to being Alicia. The plot about people of the stars was very unexpected, but what was more unexpected was that Azure actually believes in that. I get that he was always a believer while Sett never believed in those things to begin with, but in those chapters where I had no idea that he was executing her for her own sake, I really wanted to get in there and smack his head. By the way, that was what we see in the beginning of the anime too, where she hopes that he would just look at her once. It's safe to say that the writer has given both the character a fair share of time with Nina. That's why it's so damn hard for me to choose between them. Azure had come to her rescue when she was in prison, and he did raise my standard with just how loyal and caring he is. However, there are a few scenes, including him not trusting her, that just made me scoot over to Sett's side. And not to mention that he had doubts about his love for her when he heard that she was among the people of the stars who have some type of magical power over the other people, along with an ability to accept wishes. Though I don't completely get all the star people plot because Nina is one of them and not many of her wishes come true, like her wishing Azure will come to get her when she was in the carriage going to Galgada. But I do think that her wishing that she wants someone to need her in the beginning of the chapters did come true, hence the whole storyline. But I don't know, because Sett believes that it's not a big deal and had convinced us with his sweet words too. He might be a jerk in the beginning, but I really started to root for him more and more. As the writers say, he's the emotional character, more complex than Azure. He had this villain type energy going for some times, but he softened for Nina, or maybe because of Nina. And what I love the most is that he never leaves her side. Not after finding that she's not Alicia, not after getting to know about her powers, not even when he realized that there will always be a little part of her that will always care for Azure. She's always on his mind whether he gets frozen / turns into a living statue or when he's empowered by his negative thoughts. He trusted Nina about that poison incident where one of his half-brothers have tricked her into poisoning him that led to her being imprisoned, though he was really mad thinking thinking that she never loved him or never even thought of him as someone special, thinking that she only tried to like him because of Azure and her people, which was partially true, and he did try to kill her because of it, but that was because of his past. Like Azure grew up with a former king, Sett lived with an ugly man until he was 9 years old. That man who claimed to love his mother would treat him with love at one time but would hurt him the other, so it was because of his inner scared child who got hurt by his caretaker in the name of love. Still, I'd say that he loved Nina even when he wanted to hate her. They obviously have kind of enemies to lover trope, and I really love that. And not just that, it's like what Nina said. Azure is the one that found her, and Sett is the one that she found. Which one is she going to choose? We don't know that, because the manga isn't over yet. But so far, the manga was leaning towards Sett more. Maybe that's why I too am currently on his side. He was there for her when she was wandering around and had no one, when Azure had denied to even look at her. He believed her and proved to her that she's not someone who harms people with her power. Although in the current situation, chances of Sett and Nina being the endgame is decreasing because he had went back to Gilgada. And now I'm certain the writers will make us root for Azure, whose goal now is to rule the whole world. A little unrealistic, but who knows, maybe he's doing it out of love too. Though I'm not completely against Azure and Nina being together, maybe because a little part in my head is aware that Azure and Nina will be together and Sett, the god of war, will sacrifice himself for her. Rest assured, I know I'll be having more WTH moments and some teary eyes. Tell me who you are rooting for. That's all for today. Thank you for listening to me. Take care of yourself and goodbye.
No, you'll never be the same. I don't really wanna hurt you, but I can't control the pain. If you're sticking by my side, maybe we could be okay. Okay, maybe you could be the change.